some indication of how the people think. Because only in February we conducted this for the purpose of this conference. We asked around 400 people, random samples throughout Gaza. How do you think of different issues like the political process, the Palestinian Authority conduct, and political leadership, and elections, and all this? I'll give you some of the important results here. Of course, the full paper is available. For the services provided by the Palestinian authorities, health services, 32% believe that they are better. 22% believe that they are worse. And 45% believe that there is no change. The economic situation, 85% believe it is worse. Of course it is worse. And on the education, and that's interesting, 70% believe that the education services are better. I think that is because people now are going to school, children going to school, students going to school, and all this. I think that's why. There is no real change still in the curriculum, in the classroom facilities, etc. But people are happy that children are going back to school. And on this issue, by the way, I was asked by an Israeli journalist, does that mean that the Palestinians prefer the Israeli occupation? I said, of course not. I would live under the devil rule rather than the Israelis. I would prefer Yasser Arafat with all his sins rather than live under the Israeli rule, that's for sure. I think people here say that the services under the Israeli occupation were bad, but now they are worse. One positive element here is that people feel that personal safety is assured. You know, in the months immediately preceding the entry of the Palestinian force, there was a phenomenon in Gaza which was Palestinian terror against other Palestinians, a campaign of terror. Hamas and others were killing people, throwing them on rubbish dumps, and distributing videotapes of torture, alleged collaborators. That has put the whole community in a state of alarm and severe anxiety. And this is why, since the entry of the Palestinian force, 83% of the population feel that it is much safer than before. No Israelis in the streets of Gaza, and no Palestinian terror against Arab Palestinians. And that is very positive. However, people feel not very optimistic about the future. 43% of the people have a kind of optimism regarding their personal future. Only 43%. 50% are not pessimistic, are not optimistic. As the general conduct of the Palestinian Authority, 34% approving the Palestinian Authority conduct. They're happy generally with the Palestinian Authority, while 56% are not happy and disappointed. Only 20% of the people believe that we live under democratic rule. 69% believe that we don't have a democracy. 41% believe that the peace treaty is the best we can achieve. 51% are against that. 32% of the people believe that the peace treaty will lead to a Palestinian state, while 52% are against it. 46% of the people believe that the police force are doing a good job, and 48% believe they are not. So it's almost split between the two sides. As for the civil administration, 57% believe that the civil departments, different departments, are not doing a good job, while 31% are happy with the way things are conducted. Look, and this is very interesting. 90% of the people believe that you need to have connections if you are going to be appointed. Perception of wasta and connections is very widespread. 90% believe that you needed to have appointment. 77% of the sample are disappointed because the expectations of the authorities were not met. We asked people on Yasser Arafat as a leader and the different political factions. We asked people, and the way we observed, Fatah has 33%, Hamas has 19%, PLFP has 10%, Islamic Jihad 4%. They are 4 and point something, but I don't want to mention it. 4.7% Islamic Jihad, 1.8% the Democratic Front, 0.8% the Arab Liberation Front, جبهة التحرير العربية, and 29.8% nobody. This is significant. It tells you how people are. 30% almost of the population are alienated now from the process of development. If there was election today, and Yasser Arafat or Ahmed Yassin or Haider Abd al-Shafi or nobody are candidates, who will you vote for? 34.4% voted for Yasser Arafat. 33.6% nobody. 19.3% Ahmed Yassin, who's the leader of Hamas. and 11.5% Haider al-Bashir. I think it's a very good achievement, yani. Without a political party behind you. It's very good. I mean, if you have a small party, then yeah. Then we observe that from all these, you find that there is an area of 30 to 34% of the population who supports Fatah, happy with the conduct of the Yasser Arafat, happy with the conduct of the Palestinian authorities. These are the bloc of Fatah supporters now in Gaza. Now, we found that there's a difference between refugees and natives of Gaza town, especially when it comes to the economic situation. The refugees believe that it is worse, much more, significantly more than the natives. The refugees are more supportive of Hamas. The males are more aware of the disappointments, and they express that very significantly compared to females. Females are more approving of the authorities, while males feel the question of safety, they are significantly positive than the females. Also, males more significantly believe that connections and appointments are very important. And we found also small differences, but not very significant, between the people who have different educational background. But all in all, the situation now in Gaza is very complex. As everybody has given you some piece of the puzzle, it is very challenging for us. I think that it is very important for us not to pass judgment, but to be critical. We believe that we and the authorities will sing together. And we don't want to demolish the authorities as much as we want to create an environment in which Palestinians for the first time can elect their leaders. Yasser Arafat has signed on behalf of the Palestinians with the state of Israel. He did it single-handedly, and that is absolutely unacceptable. We have to have our leaders elected by the Palestinian community democratically, and these leaders can have the institution. And this is very important, because if anything happens to Yasser Arafat, and we don't have a legally, democratically elected institutions, then we will never have them, because we will be left with the 5 or 6 branches of the security forces now that are competing among each other who's to control the community. Once Yasser Arafat is out of the picture, he's still controlling them. He's out, they will compete among each other, and then we will have a police dictatorial state forever. At least now, to a certain degree, we can speak. If this situation continues as it is, and if Yasser Arafat is out of the picture without democracy, without elections, we will never be able even to speak. And I think that we should be aware of these facts. And I believe that with all the disappointment, with all the indifference and the alienation in Gaza now and the West Bank, there is also a very good momentum and dynamism inside the Palestinian community. People talk about the need for election, for democracy, for having a new political party, for a third alternative. You know, we have Hamas on one hand, we have Fatah on the other. People want something in the middle. And that is very dynamic and I think very hopeful. Thank you very much.
I don't see the speaker saying anything about the U.S. role in all this, and I'm just wondering, what should the U.S. be doing now in order to get the peace process off the dead end it's in at the present time? Could one of you or
Maybe that's something else we could also keep until closing statements. Yes.
Last year I had the fortunate opportunity to attend several lectures by the distinguished scholar, Professor Edward Said. One of the lectures was based on the premise that intellectuals had no place in politics, relating his own experience with the PNC, I think at that time, in Tunisia. However, he evaded my question when I inquired about the means for intellectuals to get involved in the political processes of the new Palestinian state. Therefore, I present this question to the panel. In addition, I'm concerned for the youth of Palestine. Will the Arafat structure eventually accommodate educated youth, or will they be forced to seek other avenues to express themselves, either formally or informally, and to express their interests? Thank you.
Does anybody want to take that quickly, or should we leave that?
I have a question about what role the PA is playing in face of the ongoing land confiscation. I understand there have been popular committees that have been formed to try to have demonstrations and have civil disobedience to stop some of these confiscations and expansions, especially in the Bethlehem area. And I've heard various reports about whether the PA is really a brake on that sort of activity or is actually participating and attempting to do something in the face of this expansion. Can anyone shed light on that?
I'm keeping a list of all these questions and I'll make sure that they get answered.
In response to the first gentleman that spoke, wouldn't it be better to just have Likud come back to power, and we will have a definite break, because what we have is a Vichy government in Gaza, and the best we have a pacification process and not a peace process. At least with Likud, we know where everybody stands, and we can have the second intifada to go on with the peace process.
So let's hope we hear a response to that. Yes, sir, and then we'll ask the speakers to
This is a question for the whole panel. Has there been any attempt to define whom you are dealing with? Are you dealing with a normal Israeli state? Are you dealing with an abnormal Jewish nationalist state? I think this has been ducked all along, but it goes to the heart of the problem. What is the role of the United States? What is the role of U.S. jury? How do you define the state you're dealing with, Israel? Is it an Israeli state or is it a Jewish state? I'll ask all members of the panel that question.
Okay, well, I would like to ask the panelists to prepare very short summing up statements in which they can respond to anything other panelists have said or respond to the questions that we've heard from the floor. The questions included one on the role of the terror operations and your attitude and whatever towards Islamic Jihad and Hamas on that score. The American role, the openings and opportunities for youth. What is the PNA doing with respect to land confiscations? And maybe Likud wouldn't be so bad after all. So what is your response? Who's going to be the first to grab the microphone?
Actually, the first question I'd like to say a word about it. I think any attempt of any life, Israeli or Palestinian, has to be condemned. And I think I can speak basically on behalf of those who work in the human rights movement. There is no problem with that. I think all these attacks are to be condemned, and any attempt on life is terrible. Now, the question of the U.S. role in the peace process, the U.S. Is the orchestrator of this entire chaos that we are living in. I think the U.S. has to take some initiatives in restoring what it already created in this region. The question of the intellectuals, I think it's a bit artificial to say that there is to separate the intellectuals and the rest of the society. Who is, after all, an intellectual and who's not, and who's everybody has a role to play in their society, and basically everybody. I don't think it is possible to say some people have to deal with politics and others, especially of their own society, because eventually, after all, we all live in these societies, and we all have the right and the duty to shape opinions and to participate actively in the work of our own society. Land confiscation, and that's the last one that I would like to say something about. I think if you look at the agreement, except in the area of Gaza and Jericho, there is actually a statement to say that the situation should stay as it was. As in the rest of the West Bank, the settlement has continued, and the expansion of settlements has continued. And as you said yourself, the situation in Bethlehem, in particular, the case of Abu al-Khadr, created a lot of attention. Now, I think the PNA, the Palestinian National Authority, has taken, and I'm not 100% informed on that because I live in Geneva and not in Palestine. The Palestinian National Authority has condemned these settlements and has asked for Israel to stop its settlement policy and so on. But I have to say, I don't think there has been some serious effort in that regard. So I think it's one of those things that I think the Palestinian Authority has to translate its words into real action and to try and push the stance that it does say to the Palestinian public, also to the Israeli government, and therefore raise its credibility on very sensitive and very, very important issues such as the fate and the status of the land in the occupied territories. Yeah, these are the only comments I have.
Just a few comments, perhaps, the role of the intellectuals. I think that there are different kinds of intellectuals. And perhaps it was the definition of free intellectual is rather utopian. And when it comes to the Palestinian scene, you cannot have that kind of luxury of not being involved in the political movement. However, there is a difference between being a servant to a political party or a political establishment, using your brains to serve that kind of regime, or being a critical commentator on the political process. And I think this is the role for the intellectuals. There is a difference between being a politician who's serving the regime and an intellectual who's free and feeling the freedom within himself and the courage to be able to criticize constructively or not. And I believe in the total freedom, unlimited freedom of the intellectual to conduct their work. Now, with the Likud and the Israelis, look, I think that the Israeli state so far has proven to be a racist state because basically of the conception of Zionism as the creation of a Jewish state that excludes all other religions or nationals from citizenship. I think if Israel has to survive, it has to be part of the Middle East, and if Israel has to survive, it has to rethink Zionism and to look for the future beyond the confines of the history of persecution of the Jews and the paranoia that has put them in a shell for a long time, that they cannot stretch out and show the human element inside themselves because of the fear that has become like a culture in Israel. I think that Jews and Palestinians together inside Israel and outside Israel should work for a future. And we should not allow Only the Likud will ask for Hamas, by the way, and Hamas will ask for the Likud because it's very clear. The issue is so complex. It is very clear to go to war. Let's go to war. But we did go to war for 50 years. When you ask for another Likud, you ask for another war. Is that what you want? Another 50 years of war? Or do you want peace? We want peace, but we want fairness, we want justice, we want our rights, and we want to live as neighbors and equal neighbors with Israel. That can be done by Israelis, by Palestinians, and by the Jewish community everywhere. These three, by the way, can pressure America. America is completely out of touch with reality. The American public is like living in a big machine. People are not aware of what is happening, even sometimes in their own country. So I mean, I expect too much from the American public. If I ask you to know something about Palestine or Israel, I don't want to be offensive or anything, but this is a fact. Once I was asked by a senator in the Congress here, why don't I vote for the Knesset? He asked me, why don't you vote? And so I had to explain to him, why don't I have to vote? Because I live under Israeli occupation and I don't have any rights. I'm a resident in Gaza, I'm not a citizen. And he was shocked. This is a senator. So what do you expect from the American public? Now the administration is completely hijacked by the Zionist lobby. That's another factor. And by the corporation, the armed corporation that of course impose on the administration their own views, their own interests, and I have no hope at all of any American administration without pressure, joint pressure from the Jewish community, from the Palestinian community, from people who want to work for a future in peace.
think that every human life is precious, but you cannot equate the oppressed with the oppressor.